Hey guys, Dan here from Reptile Encounters. Thanks so much for coming and joining us again for another wild live stream this afternoon. Feel free to say hi in the comments as we're getting started and waiting for a few more people to pop in. For now, make sure you've got notifications turned on for our live streams. You go up to the top and you click the little thing and make sure that you're getting the news first so you know every time something new is happening on our Facebook page. Also, make sure you head over to our YouTube and subscribe and ring that little notifications bell as well so you know when we're uploading content there. We've got a lot of YouTube content coming up. Check out our website. We've got all of our live stream information, our regular shows for when we're allowed to come and visit you again, as well as our new animal sponsorships where you can get involved and get fantastic packages and even meet and greet experiences with some of your favourite animals. Be sure to click share as well as we're going today. We want to share this with as many people as possible, show off our amazing, wonderful, weird Australian wildlife. Now, before we get started, we've got a few more hellos popping in now.
We sure do. We always got some hellos. We've got Rosita who's here with us again, and
G'day
Elizabeth.
again,
Cheryl and Lulu is here, and Corey and Carol are here.
Awesome. Hi again, guys. Thanks so much for joining us again. Today, we're going to be talking about adaptations. So our adaptations show is usually based at Unit 1, so Year 11, but we're going to be talking, it's all very simple stuff to understand. It's basically about the way that these animals have evolved and the features that our animals have evolved to survive and thrive in their environment. When we talk about adaptations, there's three different kinds. We've got your structural adaptations, which are how the animals are built. You've got your physiological adaptations, which is how they work. And you've got your behavioural adaptations, which is what they do. So what they do, how they work, and how they're built. Now the kind of things that we talk about. And all of our animals really are walking, flying, slithering, adaptation balls, because the way that they've evolved is all adaptations to suit the niche in their environment that they want to occupy. Now the first one we're going to meet today is a mammal. We've talked about these guys a little bit. We're very proud. They're a very, very endangered species, and here at Reptile Encounters we've bred a lot of them, which is awesome. This first one, thank you very much, Cara. This is Coda, and Coda is a brush-tailed bettong or a woylie. So just like Macanella and a few of the other ones that you probably met in some of our live streams, Coda is actually the second brush-tailed bettong that was ever born at Reptile Encounters, and he was the second of, I think we're probably getting towards 30 joeys that we have had in the time that we've been breeding these guys. They are critically endangered, one of the most endangered mammals in Australia. There's only about 15,000 of them left in the wild, and most of the places that they're found have got a big fence around them to keep out the cats and the foxes, which are part of the reason. In fact, they're most of the reason why they are one of the most endangered mammals in Australia. Now, having a bit of a sniff there. There we go. Now, when it comes to a behavioural adaptation of these guys, it's quite simple. They're nocturnal. Being nocturnal is a behavioural adaptation. There was lots of predators here in Australia that were active during the day. Remember, we didn't have lions and tigers and bears, oh my. We had tiger snakes, but that was a little bit different. A lot of our larger predators here in Australia were active during the day. Things like birds of prey and big goannas and stuff, which would have preyed on a little mammal like this. So moving to a nocturnal lifestyle got them away from a lot of those predators. Some of those predators ended up following them into the night. So we have things like quolls and carpet pythons that were still active at night. But these guys have obviously decided that being awake at night time is a much safer option, and it keeps them nice and hidden. And also, it's really cool at night where these guys live. They live in some quite arid parts of Australia. In fact, they were found from the west coast of WA right across into Western Victoria on the very dry, arid or semi-arid grasslands. And so during the day, it could be really, really hot, and they'd lose water very quickly and dehydrate. We don't want that to happen. So they became nocturnal. It was nice and cool. They could go about their business, hopping around, looking for grasses and fallen fruits, and their favourite foods, mushrooms. Absolutely love eating mushrooms. Now, like I just said, they hop around. And their hopping is thanks to an amazing structural adaptation. Let's have a look at your feet, Coda. He is a member of the kangaroo family. He is a macropod, and macropod means big feet. He's got really big feet, really long legs. He can hop about 1.5 kilometres each night looking for food as well. But have a look at the shape of his foot. If you have a look, his two toes on the inside there are fused together, and that works like a little comb for when he's grooming himself. This one on the outside is, a regular sized toe. That's there for support. But this middle toe, This toe is huge. And the reason why that's the big one is because it lines up perfectly with the rest of the foot and the leg. In the back of our legs, in all mammals, we've got the Achilles tendon. That tendon that runs right along the back. And when we walk along, or when he's moving it, that tendon compresses and then opens back up. When they're hopping, as their leg squeezes half shut, as it's compressing, all the energy gets stored and then releases, springs the leg open and propels the animal forward. This means that each hop powers the next hop. And it's an incredibly energy efficient way of moving. They can move large distances without getting overly tired because they're not using their energy. The hops are using their own energy. And that's why we've got things like red kangaroos that can hop kilometres and kilometres and kilometres each day, 8 or 9 metres in a single bound, without burning too much of their energy because they're not using that much energy to do it. It's a fantastic adaptation. The reason why so many of our bigger mammals in Australia hop around is because it saves them a lot of energy to do so. Now, living in warm environments, one of the things you got to deal with is there's not always a lot of water. Australia is a very, very dry continent as is. There's not always a lot of water, especially once you get west of the Great Dividing Range. It's not a very wet place. A lot of our desert animals have found amazing ways of conserving as much water as they can. Some of them only get the water they need from their food. They don't need to drink any surface water. These guys do get most of their water from their food, from the tubers and the fungi and things that they're eating. But to keep that water in their body, they have a fantastic adaptation. Their kidneys. The way their kidneys work is that when they're getting ready to go and pee, they take a lot of the water back out of the urine and put it back into the body. They're not wasting water, peeing left, right and centre. What they do is they pee, but it's really, really concentrated. Kind of stinks, to be honest, because it's so concentrated, but it saves them lots of water. They don't want to waste any drop of water, especially when you're out in the baking heat of Western Australia, the interior of Western Australia. Any drop of water you got, you're going to want to save. And they do that by peeing a little bit differently the way we do. Now I'll pop him back in here.
He was giving us a really good example of a nocturnal animal there.
Oh, was he
Being all
falling asleep? Was he?
pretty sleepy.
Well, it is just after 2 in the afternoon. It is the early morning for him, but that's okay. Pop away, thank you, Carl. And I'm going to grab my mate over here and fellow wildlife chef winner. This is Bob. We've all met Bob, an excellent judge of food presentation. Now, Bob, of course, is a shingleback lizard, one of my favourite animals in the world. Found right across southern Australia, from the coast of WA right across to central Victoria and all the way up into southern Queensland. They are a member of the blue-tongue family. They are a skink. They are a very large skink, found in a range of environments, but they are designed for living in those drier parts of Australia. They don't really like living where it's very cool and wet. You won't find these guys around Melbourne. We only start getting them at around Bendigo, where it's a lot drier, a lot less rainfall. They have evolved a different way of dealing with the sun. Because unlike our bettongs, these guys are diurnal. They come out during the day and they're not that fast. So they are exposed to the sun a lot. They have got these amazing big scales, shingle-like scales, just like on your roof. Having big, thick scales, yes, it does protect them from predators. There's not a lot of predators that can eat these guys. Because our venomous snakes have got such small fangs, they couldn't bite through that. It's way too thick. But it also protects them from the sun. Just like a cactus will have a really, really thick skin around it to keep all the water inside, these guys have got those big, thick scales overlapping. They really don't expose much of their skin in between. You can see there is skin in between, but it's really hard to see unless he's bending around in a certain direction because they overlap each other. And this prevents any unnecessary water loss. When he's sitting in the sun, the water could evaporate straight out of his body. He certainly doesn't want that to happen because he doesn't know when he's going to find his next little puddle to take a drink out of. And so he keeps it all inside. Now that tail, that amazing tail, is another structural adaptation. It looks like he's got 2 heads. Yep, that can work to trick predators into not knowing which end is which, and they'll even bend it around a behaviour to make that structure look just like a head. Yeah, sometimes the adaptation types all blend together. It gets a bit confusing. But that tail is also a physiological adaptation. It's full of fat. Because there's not a lot of food around all the time where they live, they need to know that they're going to get their energy from somewhere. Being a type of blue tongue, he's a garbage gut. And they stuff their faces with leaves and fruits and succulents and snails and slugs. They'll sneak into your backyard and steal the strawberries or the dog food. And they've even been recorded chewing on roadkill, which isn't quite as nice as a nice strawberry patch, but he doesn't seem to mind. Storing fat in that tail means that during the periods of the year where it's really hot and dry, or when it gets a bit too cold over winter, he can hide away and live off the fat in that tail. And they can go for up to 4 months. So it's like a camel's hump, but it works a lot better because he is an ectotherm. He's cold-blooded. They don't need to use as much energy keeping themselves at the same temperature like us warm-blooded animals do. So that energy goes a lot further. Now, being a blue tongue, they have a really, really cool behaviour they do when they get scared. If a big predator is coming towards them, something like a python or a goanna or even a big bird, they will go and they'll open their mouth, they'll flatten out their bright blue tongue. Now, you got a brown lumpy thing here with light brown bits and dark brown bits and little white spots, and they do come in a variety of colours. But suddenly seeing a bright flash of blue makes predators go, whoa. I mean, think about it. Sometimes bright colours mean danger, sometimes it means poison. Now, these guys are certainly not poisonous, but that sudden flash of colour and that lunging and that hissing, that behaviour makes predators go, well, hang on, this isn't an easy meal. And even though these guys are almost completely harmless and very, very friendly, they have got fat heads. Bob's got the fattest head I've ever seen on a shingleback. If he bit you, it would hurt a lot. And a lot of predators, seeing that lunging towards them, don't want to tempt fate, and they just tend to leave them alone. Now, I'm going to pop my favourite boy away. We're going to meet one more reptile with some amazing adaptations as well. Do we have any questions so far, folks?
Let me have a little quick
I'm
squiz.
talking at 200 miles an hour and everyone's trying to catch up.
Cheryl's excited because you're talking her language.
Awesome. Now, my last guy here. Here we go. This is now Tiny. And Tiny, oh, jeez, look. Enjoying the isolation snacks, mate. Oof. Tiny is an olive python. They are Australia's 3rd longest and absolutely our heaviest snake. Found right across the top of Queensland and the Northern Territory, and a special little population of them up the top of Western Australia, which is actually threatened now. Special subspecies called the Pilbara olive pythons. These big, beautiful snakes patrol the deserts of Northern Australia looking for their food. Spoken a lot about desert species today, haven't I? I didn't even think about that. Now, these guys are an ambush predator. Being a big, chunky snake, they don't really have the ability to move that quick. Oh, they strike quick, but in terms of covering distance, they don't really do it that well. So what they'll do is they'll flick that tongue, that beautiful forked tongue, and use that special organ in the roof of their mouth to pick up those scent particles, the Jacobson's organ, which I guess is a physiological adaptation if you think about it. They'll use that to find the smell of a mammal. And they'll sit, crawl back and wait. And they can sit in the same spot for up to 2 weeks before they move anywhere. They'll wait for that mammal to come past and they'll strike out when it gets close, wrap around it and constrict. That behaviour of throwing coils around their prey to subdue it and then constricting until they can't breathe anymore is how they subdue their prey, because they're not venomous. To help, they've got amazing structures in their mouth. Teeth. But their teeth aren't like ours. They're long and they hook back slightly, so if they get pulled, the teeth go in further. Not a nice animal to get bitten by, even if they aren't venomous. Now, at night, when they tend to be more active, because again, it's the desert, it can be a bit hard to see your food. So have a look along his bottom jaw there. Those weird little holes that kind of look like he's going at you, his mouth's not open. Those are heat-sensing pits. They give him an extra sense. He can sense the temperatures around him a lot better than we can. And he can detect this thermal signals coming off animals. If something like a rabbit, and he loves rabbit, hops within range, not only can he sense that there is something warm surrounded by the cold desert ground, because at night, desert gets cold, he can even tell roughly how big it is, which means he can strike out, grab it, wrap around it, squeeze, and then swallow it down without actually seeing it properly with his eyes. It's amazing. Now, why are they so big? Is probably the number one question we get asked about olive pythons. Why does a snake need to be that size? Because it's cool, for one. But also, there's actually two reasons. Number one is it prevents competition. If every snake out there was the same size, they'd all be eating the same food. Where he lives, there are children's pythons that only get to that long. And they're eating little things like the geckos we met this morning. Then you've got your medium-sized pythons, like the northwestern carpet pythons, that'll be eating rats and smaller possums and things like that. Then you get your big pythons, like olives, that'll be eating the larger prey, like birds, rabbits, wallabies. They love eating rock wallabies, and even things like feral cats and foxes, which is very, very helpful. They can even eat small crocodiles. It's amazing. The other reason that they are this size is because it helps keep them active. Warming up in the sun late in the hour, or sitting on a warm rock and warming up by absorbing that heat is how these guys become active when the sun's not around. They don't bask that often in the sun because they are nocturnal. Being bigger and thicker means that they've, just by volume, they can hold on to heat a lot longer than some of the smaller species. So a children's python might come out, warm up quickly, and then find a gecko before it goes back to bed. But geckos are absolutely everywhere. The prey of these guys is not always as easy to find. And so they need to be active for a little while longer. And so being big and thick and holding onto that heat helps them. There's another really big, thick snake that lives in the same area as these guys too, the black-headed python. But black-headed pythons eat reptiles. So even though they're the same size, they're really not competing for the same foods. And that way they're not in competition with another python. They've got their own little niche that they can exist in. Now, the way they digest their food is an amazing physiological adaptation to deal with saving energy. When they're not digesting, and you're not digesting at the moment, I don't think so, or he's going to go to the toilet on me, his whole digestive system, all his guts, shrivel up a little bit, and they get enough blood to keep them alive. It's kind of a state of suspended animation. When food's going down his throat, and his throat, his esophagus, starts squeezing like this, which is kind of how they chew, his body goes, there's food coming. His heart will swell to twice its normal size and start pumping and basically inflate that digestive tract, and all the other organs get out of the way. The food will come through, they'll start rapidly digesting. And they can digest a big meal almost in its entirety over about a week or two, depending on the size of the animal that they've swallowed. They'll go to the toilet. Sometimes you think that they've gone to the toilet so much more's come out than went in. Isn't that right? And then everything will shrivel back up, go back to normal. The heart will shrink back down to a regular size. What this means is that he's not wasting energy maintaining a body system that he's not using. It's getting the bare minimum to keep it alive, so his energy can be put towards moving around and looking for the food that he's going to use to fill that digestive system to get more energy. It's the reason why after a decent meal, some of these larger pythons can go for months and months and months, hello gorgeous, without eating another meal. Absolutely amazing, especially if you're out in the desert and you really don't want to be cruising around when it's too hot if you don't want to be. Now, he was our last animal that we're going to meet today. I hope you've enjoyed learning about these amazing adaptations, some of our most unique and unusual wildlife. Do we have any more questions before we
do?
Head on? Awesome.
So we have one from Lily, and she would like to know, what is the biggest meal these guys can eat?
Hi, Lily. Well, they can stretch their mouth open. It's another structural adaptation, actually. They've got stretchy bits on the sides and right at the front there, and they can extend it out. It's not dislocating. It's called disarticulation, and they open it right up to the size of a basketball. So for him, he could eat possums, rabbits, cats. Unfortunately, every once in a while they cruise into someone's backyard and might accidentally eat the family pet. But their natural prey will be things like rock wallabies. They love living in rocky gorges close to water. Rock wallabies and other small to medium-sized macropods. They'll be eating small crocodile. Crocodile that, even if it's 1.5 meters long, if you look at it long ways, might only be that far across. So it's actually quite easy for these guys to swallow them because they swallow them snout first. and they can get something big like that down. They can take on some quite large prey items.
We have a great question about the heart you were talking about before.
Yeah,
Whereabouts is these guys' heart?
Oh, I think it's about a third of the way down. Their heart's kind of long and kind of along there. Between their mouth and the other end, everything in these guys is pretty much the same as us. The only difference is that everything's a little bit more stretched out and their lungs are a little bit different. One lung is a lot larger than the other, and in some snake species, the smaller lung actually isn't there anymore, and they've just got the one big lung. But everything else works pretty much the same as it does with us.
So there's no special reason the heart is in that position?
Oh, not that I'm sure of. Are you hinting to something, Yvette?
No, that was part of the question.
Oh, okay. Actually, one of the big issues that we have, especially with snakes in captivity, is because these guys can crawl up to 4 kilometres looking for food or looking for a mate. In captivity, they're not going to do that. And so overfeeding is a really big issue. If you feed your snakes too often in captivity and their heart's going big, small, big, small, big, small, and they're putting on lots and lots of fat, it can put a lot of strain on their organs. And obesity is actually a major factor in the ill health of some captive pythons. Overfeeding is not a great idea, and in fact, it's actually healthier for them to have a big meal less often than it is to have small meals more often.
Harry, Bonnie and Toby have a question about how big Tiny will get.
At the moment, Tiny, give me a look at you. Can I have my arm back, please? Now, I'm just over 1.8 metres long, so my arms will be about the same. And that would put him just over, 2.5, maybe with him, I reckon, 2.5 metres long. That's about the average for wild olive pythons. It is known that the ones in Queensland and the Northern Territory have been recorded up to about 4 metres. And the special subspecies in the Pilbara up the top of WA have been recorded up to 4.5 metres. And thick. They are a chunky snake. There are stories about the olive pythons from the Pilbara getting to 6.5 metres long. But no one has actually made an official record of finding them. So if we do, awesome, because that's huge. But they might just be, the fish was this big, then it was this big, then it was this big. They are a very large python. They're certainly bigger than the jungle python taboo who's hanging out behind me. Look at the size difference there. Very, very different. Now, thanks so much for tuning in. Thanks for all your amazing questions as well, guys. My name's Dan. I'm the Senior Executive Reptile. Reptile? Yes, I'm the Senior Reptile here. Wildlife Ambassador is my job. I should learn that at some point. Senior Executive Wildlife Ambassador here at Reptile Encounters. Make sure that you've got notifications turned on for Reptile Encounters so you know when our live streams are coming out. Same thing, subscribe to our YouTube, check out our website and our amazing animal sponsorships, and make sure you share this video so everybody can learn about our amazing Australian wildlife and we can keep doing the thing we love doing. I'll see you next time.